I'm kind of done for the night. I got the pressure regulator side in. This was a pain in the butt to get assembled because the reverse boost valve has two pieces, and unlike the original one, the GM one, this one can fall out and then it'll kind of bind up on this spring here. The inner kind of dart-shaped piece that goes in the reverse boost, and you got to get this down far enough to get that snap ring to seat. I had to put it in and out multiple times and put it out, basically put it in and put it together, if I can talk going straight up, because otherwise that little dart or slug inside the reverse boost would fall out, and then you never get it together. But I did finally get it together. I also want to make sure that this valve is all the way up. If it's hanging a little bit, it'll kind of bind and then you can't get the spring seated. The spring is almost near coil bind in order to get it together. And then I got the servo in with the Torx. Make sure that the primer, kind of that orifice for the converter charge, is in there, because that'll feed off the pump. And or no, that's to lubricate the front bushing. Never mind. That goes there. So that's the front half lubrication. Pumps together. I'm pretty sure that's the servo, the pump slide spring. Looking at the Sonax catalog, that's what it looks like. It looks like it's just a slightly shorter but stiffer version. Got the vanes in. I've heard that if this ring is sloppy, either the ring is bad, your pump slide is bad, or your vanes aren't good quality, but this one's got a nice snug fit. The kit does come with a new O-ring. There's a little like cast iron ring underneath here, and then an O-ring goes between there and the housing. This little spring down there will push down once you get there. Put a new O-ring and seal there, and then the slide spring. So the only thing I don't know what to do is if that spring replaces those springs. I really don't think so. I don't honestly know where that spring goes. I don't know where this part goes either. It's not in my original transmission. Hopefully I don't have to tear it apart and put it in. I don't know where it goes otherwise, but pump's kind of done for the night. I did get the bushing pressed in here also with the help of my arbor press and a 1 15/16 socket is perfect. So I really want to get this done because I got to get cleaning on that to get that thing powered. So I got to reach out to my trans supplier, figure out who made that or what that spring is, what this thing is, and then I can button up the pump, drop the pump in, and then start putting on the valve body. New day, new part of the transmission. So I figured out that small spring I thought might go in here is actually the inside of this spring. Basically a very heavy pump slide spring gets put in. So there's two. That little washer actually gets put up here. Apparently that spring breaks sometimes because it's highly stressed with that pin. So this washer reinforces that spring a bit and prevents adds a little bit of preload to that spring to increase the pressure. So figured out where that spring goes, figured out where that one goes, and this is actually a retainer for the seal. I didn't know that existed. Basically it helps hold this in. Basically recommended is to throw some Loctite on this in addition to just the normal seal, and that clamps on. So a little bit of clarity helps to call your trans builder and ask questions. So cool. pump halves are connected. Something you'll have to do. Some people use the case itself, well, in the black trash bag, but basically they'll install the pump upside down without the stator and use the housing to align the two halves. There's a lot of tolerance on the through-hole side of this plate that allows the back pump half to float quite a bit relative to the front. So you need to align them both together concentric. Otherwise, this pump assembly won't drop into the housing. So what I just do is have a bunch of hose clamps. I got one long one and a couple short ones. And just snug that up. And then that way that aligns the two halves nicely. And then torque the bolts to whatever the spec in the book says, which I gotta find. Time to throw in the check balls before I put on the spacer plate. I guess before that, it's worth mentioning this is the 3.4 accumulator. This is kind of a contentious subject depending on what builder you want to listen to. Apparently, sometimes GM put it with the piston in first and then the spring. And sometimes, like this case, it's the spring first and the piston. The CK manual recommends putting the piston in and then the spring. Husek recommends putting the spring and then the piston. I'm listening to the guy that did my shift kit, so the spring goes in first. Also, check balls, I just use some white lithium grease. You're probably supposed to use trans gel or petroleum jelly or something, but white lithium grease is pretty dissolvable, I think. I hope. Anyways, check balls, there's originally 9, but this 55K here is in the capsule in the housing, so that's kind of ignore that. I'm putting all of them in except the TV exhaust, which is up there, and 55J, which is the 4th accumulator per Husek's instructions. So I got one up here, one down there, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, so a total of 6. Both gaskets and the spacer plate are on. Both the accumulators are in. Kind of a helpful hint is these gaskets don't have part numbers on them to know which one to go. However, one does say C and the other one says VB. C stands for case, V stands for valve body. So the one with a hole in it faces the case because it says C. The one with the solid goes on this plate, which is the accumulator stop plate, or kind of bracket base plate, and that says valve body, VB. And then 2 check balls go on the valve body, right here and right here. There's also a provision for one there, but I was told not to put one there, so leaving that one out. Valve body's in. The order I did this was basically loosely kind of tighten the screws. The shift spool valve will fall out that end, so what I did is I installed the little shifter zigzaggy here and then installed it on the detent. I ended up pulling this bolt out and ended up having a seal here that I dropped. That's the shifter shaft seal. I just used my my channel locks to go in and grab that kind of head of this nail, which prevents the shaft from coming in and out. Pull that out to pull that shaft out the side, change that seal, and then that allows the shaft to go out just enough to get the detent onto the shaft and onto the park pawl rod that goes all the way back. I do still need to put the detent lever spring on, put the park pawl bracket on, which is back there, but it's late, so I'm gonna wrap up for the night. Cover it back up, and tomorrow should be the day that I'm ready to button the transmission back up. Against all odds, this transmission's fully together. The only thing I have to do still is drop the oil pan on, put a filter in, and I got to change the speedometer gears. The correct speedometer gears are in the other 204R that are actually currently behind the Turbo Buick. I don't want to spend the money to get different speedometer gears when that one has it. I got to pull that transmission out to get the core converter to send that back in to get it restalled. Since I'm cheap and I don't want to buy a new one, and I need to get a filter, like I say, but I don't want to put this transmission in with oil in it. I got to pull the pan anyways, and I don't have a filter, so I'm just going to dribble some oil on the manifold valve body and put it in dry. And then while I'm in there, before I put it in the car, swap the gears for the speedometer. But otherwise, this went together pretty easy. This new solenoid you just attach. I got the TV cable, the new lockup solenoid. Hesek, since he supplied a BR valve body to me, has the additional third gear lockup, because this is the third gear apply. So I got that other switch, and then he just gave me a second wire, and I reused this harness and then just added the pin out. I got a new connector on the side there, so wow. Still got some cleanup to do on the bench, but I had very few parts left, a couple O-rings, a couple seals, but I'm not worried because it's stuff that Hesek installed on my drum, or it's O-rings that, I shouldn't say O-rings, seals that were already supplied on some of my parts, so I didn't change them, or like the servo seals that I get in the non-GM kit because it's a factory build kit. So with that one, it's done. And part, I guess, 4 or 5 will come once I put it in the car, but that's going to be maybe this winter because I got this thing to drive and the supercharged 3.8 for the Firebird rear wheel drive setup that's coming up next. So, yep, done with this one. Wow, that was a lot of work and expensive. Big learning experience.